All right, fine. You want politics? You want a grim reminder of the dystopian fascist nightmare land that we are quickly plummeting into? You want a reminder of the fact that Republicans as a group are essentially irredeemable and that no matter how well intentioned the individuals might be, they have been roped into a propaganda network that leads them to defending stuff like this? DeSantis proposes a new civilian military force in Florida that he would control. I think the technical term for this is private army. That's the preferred nomenclature. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wants to reestablish a World War II era civilian military force that he, not the Pentagon, would control. DeSantis pitched the idea Thursday as a way to further support the Florida National Guard during emergencies like hurricanes. The Florida National Guard has also played a vital role during the pandemic in administering COVID-19 tests and distributing vaccines. But in a nod to the growing tensions between Republican states and the Biden administration over the National Guard, DeSantis said this unit, called the Florida State Guard, would be, quote, not encumbered by the federal government. What a plus. He said this force would give him, quote, the flexibility and the ability to respond to events in our state in the most effective way possible, end quote. DeSantis is proposing bringing it back with a volunteer force of 200 civilians, and he is seeking $3.5 million from the state legislature in startup costs to train and equip them. Vosh, don't several states, including California, have a state guard controlled by the governor? How is this different than the 20 or so that already exist? As I understand it, this is distinct in that it's a civilian military force. It's not encumbered by any of the legislation, restrictions, or requirements that that otherwise withhold this stuff. Is this the guy who legalized driving into protesters? Yes, Ron DeSantis is the one who essentially made it much more easy to get away with running over protesters in a car. This is just posturing. 3.5 million does nothing. Guys, the right wing produces militias with no funding from the government. I don't think you understand. 3.5 million isn't a lot as part of a military budget. But in terms of legitimizing a private militia for the governor, that's actually quite a lot. It's more about legitimacy. And it's not like they couldn't fund themselves. This is kind of like how there are unofficial border patrol militias, all across like Mexico, They don't have state funding. They literally just go out there with their horses and guns and cowboy hats and do the work themselves. But legitimizing them through state funding and through direct control from a very right-wing governor obviously escalates things significantly. It also gives them a greater degree of legal pretense. You should take a look at Bo's video and see what you think. Sure. If you think Bo's video adds insight, let's take a peeperino. That's my preferred term. Florida State Guard and DeSantis.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again.
Howdy.
So today we're going to talk about Florida and DeSantis and his new little program or whatever. I know there's a lot of people who are concerned about it, and the coverage of this little announcement did exactly what DeSantis wanted it to do. Okay? This is a joke. It's not going to be effective. It can't be effective. It wasn't designed to be effective at actually producing some kind of paramilitary organization that the governor can call out. Okay? Its goal was to be a political stunt to appeal to the less informed members of his base who actually want that. I know that's easy for me to say, right? But how do I know that that's what's going on? Because I looked at the budget.
Well, yeah. Well, this is the case for most everything the Republicans do. The Republicans talk a huge game and get very little done. But they do it because they know that their soy-chugging audience will eat it up.
To start this up, they allocated $3.5 million. Anybody who has ever worked security, been involved in the military, anything like that, already knows where this is going. That's not enough money to do anything. $3.5 million? If you wanted to set up some kind of paramilitary organization, you would need at least one paid person in every county and then like a supervisor for Southern Florida, Central Florida, and Northwest Florida. That's how it would be divided up. If they paid those people just the average pay of a normal cop in Florida, they are already out of money. That doesn't include any like higher ups. Just the base staff, the bare minimum, they're out of money just on the salary. That doesn't include benefits. That doesn't include the stuff they would need, such as cars, radios, gas money, offices, phones, anything like that.
So I disagree a little bit with the implications that are here. This would be the case only if you thought of this organization as a legitimate extension of state power, as opposed to essentially what it could be, which would be a brown shirt, semi-legitimate militia. The militia groups operate and run around states and countries with no government funding at all. They are perfectly capable of doing it with minimal government funding. What he's talking about right here is the baseline infrastructure that you would need to to uh, um to have like a functional, like meaningful, useful apparatus. But we're not talking about that, right? What we're really talking about is the potential to legitimize state terror, um, or to give sort of legal cover to its exertion.
Like that. The money's not there.
What if he's right and DeSantis just wants to stoke a reaction from the left? That's always what they want. That's everything the Republicans do. This is what they've been doing for decades. They throw everything at the wall and see what sticks all the time. Not half, sorry, like 95% of the shit that Trump said didn't end up happening. But the things that did end up happening were terrifying. And the things that didn't end up happening sometimes came close. Was Trump ever actually close to legally legitimizing his takeover of the election? No. But the constant attempt to do so was still incredibly threatening to our democracy. Will DeSantis actually get some paramilitary organization? No, probably not. I doubt this will have any allocated funding. However, even the attempt to do so is a way of virtue signaling to the far right base, and additionally to legitimizing the idea. What is today a ridiculous, outlandish, attempt at baiting the left might in a decade be a legitimate policy point. We've seen that happen before, and it can happen again. Now, I'm not saying that Beau the Fifth Column is wrong here. I'm just saying that in line with his belief that this is an effort at, baiting the audience, baiting the left, etc., I don't think you would need the militia to be a functional organization. It would only need to be a pseudo-legitimate extension of the governor's political will.
This is a joke. It's a political stunt. So he can set himself up as General DeSantis or whatever. And then aside from that, if you actually look into what this is designed to be, it really looks like he's just recreating FEMA's CERT program, Community Emergency Response Training Team, something like that. And basically what that was or is, people go from FEMA and they teach basic first aid, first responder skills, stuff like that, how to help out after a disaster. That appears to be more what this is a training program. Now, could later it be expanded into something that people would actually need to worry about? Sure. But with the budget it has, this isn't something to be concerned about. I would be far more concerned if Governor DeSantis decided to start setting up task forces inside FDLE, that's the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or the state troopers, something like that. That would be more likely to be used the way the coverage is kind of indicating, which is like DeSantis' secret police or something like that. I don't really think this program is necessary. I think it's a giant waste of money, but it's also not something I'm going to lose sleep over. It doesn't have any funding.
To me, the real concern that I would have is essentially that, like, DeSantis, who is a right-wing nut job, would put out the call and be like, hey, we're looking for 200 patriots to help us keep our state safe. And, you get like the most lunatic upper middle class militia jockey, prepper, survivalist. Every single one of them has an arsenal in their garage shit. And then all of them come together and, DeSantis is like, hey, yeah, we can't like provide you a meaningful intelligence apparatus. We can't provide you transportation costs. We can give you some basic training equipment, and we want you to show up to protests, okay? And if you show up to protests, you can do what the police do, except with fewer restrictions, and if you ever get in trouble, we'll clog up the courts for you. That would be my concern, okay? That would be the thing that concerns me. It really depends on what kind of legal you know, like what kind of legal limitations are placed on the formation of this unit. There are people in chat who are spamming about the California State Guard, and I'm actually looking at that right now. I think, first of all, even if California had something legislatively identical to what DeSantis is proposing, I still think there's a fundamental difference because DeSantis is a fucking lunatic and would only be doing this for political purposes. But the State Guard, um, it's a state defense force under the command of the governor of California through the state's general. And it says that they're all subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So I don't know if this would be the case for the Florida Guard, but the California Guard, even though they're volunteers under the control of the governor, are bound by the legal expectations of the military. In fact, they probably have fewer privileges than military officials do because they're actually volunteers. They would just be bound by additional limitations, which I imagine would be quite restrictive, you know. So depending on whether or not the Florida Guard would be, well, let's see. Maybe it's mentioned here in the CNN article. Let's see. States have the power to create defense forces separate from the National Guard, though not all of them use it. If Florida moves ahead, it would become the 23rd active state guard in the country. Is it necessary that they would share in those UCMJ restrictions? These guards are little-known auxiliary forces with origins dating back to the advent of state militias in the 18th century. While states in the Department of Defense share control of the National Guard, state guards are solely in the power of a governor. The proposal from DeSantis comes on the heels of... Actually, we can learn about this. Hold on. America State Guards. Let me see if there's any kind of... like, baseline military set of requirements. You know, like if that's something sort of ubiquitous. Let's see. Militia or military units that operate under sole authority of a state governor. They're distinct. They cannot become federal entities. The federal government recognizes state defense forces as per the Compact Clause of the U.S. Constitution under 32 U.S.C. 109. Preferring their separation from the National Guard. However, under the same law, individual members are not exempt from service in the armed forces. Okay, fine. Nearly every state has laws authorizing state defense forces. Now, let me see. What are their structure, special units? Structure, maybe. Some state defense forces advertise recruitment and physical standards lower than the U.S. military with relaxed waiver standards. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? Considering the fact that the U.S. military can be deployed abroad. No, I haven't, Galley, but based. Let me see. California has no fitness test prior to entry. That's good. You know, very inclusive. Weight height standards more relaxed. We're trying to concentrate. What's up?
He just followed me up here.
All right, he can read it with me. The fact that different states have different standards for allowing people to be within the state guard suggests to me that they don't have a consistent, ubiquitous set of legal limitations placed on them. How do you feel about this? What are your thoughts on this matter? I love him. Go, scoot. I have to roll my wheels there. Okay. Maintained by the active State Defense Forces, Commission, Sole Commission, State Military Code. Organized SDFs, organizational structure. Most state defense forces do not require weapons proficiencies. Well, what are the... Huh. Okay. Well, in the absence of any other information, it seems like there is not some standard of legal culpability or like internal restrictions, you know, like guidelines and requirements that that would limit the Florida State Guard unless they were deliberately implemented. That would be my guess. Anyway, Democrats immediately expressed alarm at DeSantis' announcement. Let's see. Wannabe dictator trying to make his move for his own vigilante militia like we've seen in Cuba. Nice. Florida Guard was created in 1941 during World War II as a temporary force to fill the void left behind when the Florida National Guard was deployed to assist in U.S. combat efforts. Disbanded after the war ended. State Guard typically deployed to respond to disaster. Florida law authorizes the governor to maintain a defense force as necessary to assist the civil authorities in maintaining law and order, meaning DeSantis would have another force to respond to unrest that may erupt in the future. DeSantis swiftly deployed the Florida National Guard to major cities after protests and violence during BLM. Okay. The announcement on Thursday came out during a broader rollout of DeSantis' plan to bolster Florida's National Guard, which included $100 million in funding proposals to establish 3 new armories, build a new headquarters, and provide support for Florida National Guardsmen seeking higher education degrees. All right. This could go a lot of different ways. In all likelihood, this will never mean anything beyond talk. However, I do think there is a meaningful concern to the idea of DeSantis not only creating an organization like this, but being able to essentially shape its organizational structure from the ground up. DeSantis is a lunatic, and I have no doubt that if he ever does implement such a thing, even with minimal budgeting, it will be for the purpose of extending the arm of state violence to impede his political opponents. It's not like he's a stranger to do that. Isn't DeSantis the one who tried to silence one of those COVID whistleblowers? Remember? Back towards the beginning of the pandemic, one of the researchers into COVID was reporting numbers, and yeah, what was that? Let me see. DeSantis whistleblower COVID. This is the guy who made it easier to drive cars into protesters. Let me see. Fired whistleblower. Yeah, the former health department employee. And then her home was raided. It was absolutely insane. Jesus. Well, anyway, we'll see how that goes.